Flashes erupted like lightning, hundreds of eyes locked in unison, and through that dazzling storm walked a silhouette at once delicate and commanding, Karlie Kloss. She was never just a model. She was a symbol of a new generation where beauty was measured not only by endless legs but also by intelligence and inner strength. Yet to ascend to such a throne, what did Karlie sacrifice? And what drove a girl from Missouri to rise to the pinnacle of fashion, only to step away at the very height of her glory? She was once called the sweet giant of fashion, a paradoxical image, gentle yet overwhelming on the catwalk. As a teenager, Karlie conquered runways from Dior and Versace to the legendary stage of Victoria's Secret. But her story was never only about glamorous gowns or glossy magazine covers. Hidden beneath was a quieter truth, a struggle to define herself, to resist the mold, and to carve a different path within an industry notorious for its merciless pace. Perhaps what makes Karlie unforgettable is precisely this tension, her dance between the blinding light of fashion and the darker undertones of personal choices. She embodies both the dream and the dissonance, reminding us of the thin line between the sparkling world of 90-second supermodels and the inevitable dark side of fashion that shadows even the brightest stars. A paradox, a mystery, and ultimately, a legacy. Karlie Elizabeth Kloss was born on the 3rd of August, 1992, in Chicago, Illinois, but her formative years were spent in St. Louis, Missouri, a city often described as the quiet heartbeat of America. She did not grow up among neon lights or fashion capitals, but rather in a middle-class family where humility and hard work were core values. Her father, Kurt Kloss, was a doctor. Her mother, Tracy, an art director. With 3 sisters by her side, Karlie's childhood was anchored in love, stability, and the sense that, though the world might be vast, home would always provide her with strength. From an early age, Karlie revealed a passion for the arts. Ballet became her first true discipline, shaping both her body and her will. Hours of rigorous practice instilled poise, precision, and stamina, the very qualities that would later mesmerize audiences when she walked on the world's most dazzling stages. While her peers spent afternoons in playgrounds, Karlie was in studios, learning how to control each movement, transforming discipline into grace. Her runway walk, often compared to a symphony, was born here, amid the sweat and music of ballet lessons. Yet childhood was not always kind. Her extraordinary height, noticeable from a very young age, often made her feel different, sometimes even isolated. She was teased, misunderstood, and occasionally left out of childhood games. But what could have been a lifelong wound became, instead, a hidden reservoir of strength. Karlie began to understand that what set her apart might one day set her free. Difference, she realized, was not a burden but a gift waiting for its stage. Life in Missouri was far from glamorous, yet it nurtured Karlie's character. Sunny afternoons, quiet neighborhoods, and the simplicity of everyday life taught her the values she would cling to: resilience, persistence, and authenticity. Even as she later stood under the blinding lights of Paris or New York, Karlie would often recall Missouri's calm rhythm as her grounding force. There was also a spark of intellectual curiosity. Beyond her love for ballet and art, Karlie developed an interest in science and mathematics. Few knew that the tall, shy girl who seemed destined only for photographs and poses also dreamed of unraveling the mysteries of technology and the universe. It is no surprise, then, that her later initiative, Code with Klossie, found its seeds in these quiet years of study. To her classmates, she was simply the tall, awkward girl, hovering between insecurity and wonder. But behind those ballet routines and daydreaming eyes lay a fire waiting to ignite. Karlie was not destined to remain confined to Missouri's horizon. She was carrying within her the makings of someone who would not only step onto the runways of global fashion, but also challenge its very structures. Her childhood story is not one of immediate glamour, but one of preparation, a life that seemed ordinary at first glance. yet secretly building the foundation of someone who would eventually rise among legends, standing both in line with the 92nd supermodels who came before her, and apart because her journey would expose her to the dark side of fashion in ways she never expected. The story of how Karlie Kloss entered fashion reads like the opening scene of a film. In 2005, at just 13 years old, she participated in a small charity runway show in St. Louis. It was a modest community event, nothing close to the grand stages of Paris or Milan, but destiny often hides in unlikely places. As Karlie walked in that simple dress, a local photographer and a modeling scout saw something different. A tall, awkward teenager with a face still soft with innocence, yet carrying a striking presence that could not be ignored. Weeks later, Karlie signed with a local modeling agency. For her family strangers to the fashion world, it was overwhelming. Her mother, Tracy, worried that the industry was too harsh, too tempting for a girl so young. But Karlie, with a composure rare at her age, assured her parents this was something she wanted to try, a chance she could not let slip away. By 2007, at only 15, Karlie was invited to New York to audition for Fashion Week. Her first impressions of the city were dizzying, skyscrapers towering above her, casting shadows over crowded casting rooms filled with sharp, competitive faces. Yet rather than shrink back, Karlie drew strength from her ballet training. She walked with rhythm, each step precise and confident. The casting directors noticed immediately. This was not a timid teenager fumbling in borrowed heels, but a star in the making. That same year, Karlie was chosen to open the BCBG Max Azria show at New York Fashion Week. The moment her foot touched that polished runway, the industry's gaze shifted. The 15-year-old from Missouri became the talk of editors and designers alike. Soon, the press would name her walk the Karlie Walk, a stride so fluid, deliberate, and hypnotic that it seemed to suspend time itself. But her path was not without resistance. Whispers circulated. Can a girl from Missouri really survive in Paris or Milan? Some doubted she could sustain herself in the ruthless business. Even friends back home struggled to understand why Karlie chose such an unfamiliar road, one that looked glamorous on the surface but was already known for its relentless demands. Yet Karlie never wavered. Every skeptical remark only fueled her determination. Life became a blur of airports, hotel rooms, and balancing homework with rehearsals. Karlie split her time between St. Louis and New York, juggling teenage life with the heavy responsibilities of a rising star. There were nights she cried quietly in unfamiliar hotel beds, missing the comfort of home. But every morning, she stood tall, smiling, and ready to step into the lights once again. Her career had begun not with a spectacular campaign or a Vogue cover, but with a modest community runway, and Karlie turned that moment into the doorway to an empire. This was more than luck, it was an awakening. From that instant, she was no longer simply a tall girl from Missouri. She was becoming part of the narrative that connected her to the history of 92nd Supermodels, and yet distinct, because her journey would inevitably confront her with the dark side of fashion, the sacrifices, the doubts, and the lonely silence behind the applause. Karlie Kloss's true breakthrough came after 2007, when the fashion world began to take notice of her distinctive yet mesmerizing walk. Barely 15, she was already striding across the most prestigious runways and soon became one of the most sought-after faces in the industry. Her now famous Karlie Walk, those long, decisive strides softened by the grace of ballet, left audiences spellbound. It was said that when Karlie took to the runway, every gaze was drawn, every room silenced, as though hypnotized by her presence. From 2008 to 2015, Karlie lived through what many called her golden era. She became the muse of countless designers: Dior, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Alexander McQueen, Versace. Her face graced the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Elle, cementing her as a global icon of modern elegance. In 2009, Vogue Paris placed her among the top 30 models of the 2002, an astonishing achievement for someone who had only just turned 17. Perhaps her most iconic chapter was her time as a Victoria's Secret angel. With radiant wings and a smile that seemed to light up the entire stage, Karlie captivated millions of viewers worldwide. But she was more than just another angel. She exuded a different kind of beauty, a beauty defined by confidence, intellect, and the youthful spark that set her apart from the crowd. Her versatility was another strength that elevated her above peers. Karlie could transform seamlessly from the ethereal princess draped in Dior haute couture to the fierce warrior embodied in Versace's bold creations. This rare ability made her a designer's dream, a blank canvas on which they could paint visions of fantasy and rebellion alike. Fashion's greatest visionaries showered her with praise. Photographer Steven Meisel once remarked that Karlie had the ability to change the entire mood of a frame with just one glance. Anna Wintour, the formidable editor-in-chief of Vogue, described her as one of the rare models with both timeless beauty and intellectual sharpness. Compliments such as these solidified Karlie's reputation, not merely as a model, but as an irreplaceable phenomenon. On the runways of Paris, Milan, and New York, Karlie was more than a participant, she was an event. Each of her appearances became a spectacle, something audiences eagerly anticipated. For a time, she stood among the ranks of legends, a presence that bridged the grandeur of the 90s Supermodels with the modern sensibility of her generation. And yet, within this dazzling peak lay the stirrings of something more complex. Karlie was never content to simply be a mannequin in motion. She began to see herself not only as part of fashion's spectacle, but also as someone who could and should question its structures. In her eyes, beyond the cheers and applause, there was always another layer: the sacrifices, the judgments, the invisible weight carried by those who lived in the spotlight. This awareness would ultimately guide her toward choices that shocked the industry, revealing that even in the glow of success, the dark side of fashion was always near, whispering in the silence between each runway show. While many supermodels basked in the glow of their careers, Karlie Kloss chose a different path. Even at the peak of her fame, she began asking herself, was fashion truly everything? She loved the runway, but she did not want to become a product stripped of identity, endlessly molded to fit others' visions. What transformed Karlie into an icon was not only her beauty, but also the fearless decisions that set her apart from the crowd. In 2015, at the height of her fame as a Victoria's Secret angel, a role coveted by thousands, Karlie shocked the industry by walking away. She chose education, intellectual growth, and meaningful projects over endless sequins and feathers. To many, it seemed unthinkable. Why would a 22-year-old surrender such prestige? But Karlie explained it with clarity. She wanted more than just glamour. Her departure was not a retreat, but a declaration. Soon after, she founded Code with Klossie, a free coding camp for teenage girls. Using her fame, Karlie inspired a new generation of young women to claim space in technology, a field long dominated by men. This wasn't just philanthropy, it was revolution. By redefining what it meant to be a role model, she became a new archetype of the modern woman, beautiful, intelligent, and courageous enough to challenge stereotypes. Of course, this boldness came at a cost. Some in the fashion industry criticized her, labeling her too rational or too serious for the fantasy-driven world of catwalks. She lost lucrative contracts because she dared to say no to demands that clashed with her values. Yet Karlie refused to compromise. For her, authenticity mattered more than applause. The greatest test came in 2017 when Karlie appeared in a Vogue editorial inspired by Japanese culture, only to be accused of cultural appropriation. In a field where silence is often the strategy, Karlie took a different approach. She publicly apologized, acknowledged her mistake, and promised to learn. It was a humbling moment that proved she was willing not only to shine, but also to own her flaws. Many admired her honesty. It set her apart in an industry notorious for sweeping controversies under the rug. What made Karlie unforgettable was not that she never stumbled, but that she always confronted her stumbles head-on. She resisted being defined solely by the industry, refusing to allow herself to become another cautionary tale of the dark side of fashion. Instead, she showed that one could step off the runway and still remain powerful, still inspire, still lead. In this, Karlie stood as both heir and outlier to the legacy of the 90s Supermodels. Like them, she conquered the runways and magazine covers. Unlike many, she turned away before the applause faded, daring to rewrite her own story. Karlie's independence, her refusal to conform, and her decision to live on her own terms elevated her from model to icon, someone whose choices continue to resonate far beyond fashion's shimmering walls. To the public eye, Karlie Kloss was the radiant figure who lit up catwalks around the globe. Yet behind the scenes, her journey was marked by trials, doubts, and the inevitable tension between glory and personal choice. Walking away from Victoria's Secret in 2015 was her first shocking break with convention, but it was not the only turning point. In the years that followed, Karlie gradually withdrew from the relentless cycle of fashion weeks. The absence was impossible to ignore. Journalists speculated, has Karlie faded? Does she still have a place in fashion's hierarchy? Fans who once anticipated her every runway appearance now mourned her absence. The girl who had electrified Dior, Versace, and countless others seemed to vanish into silence. But her retreat was not simply professional, it was also deeply personal. In 2018, Karlie married Joshua Kushner, a businessman and the younger brother of Jared Kushner, senior advisor to then-President Donald Trump. The marriage ignited controversy. Though Joshua was known for progressive views distinct from his brothers, the association with the Kushner name stirred public debate. For Karlie, who had cultivated an image of independence and activism, the scrutiny was suffocating. She suddenly found herself judged not for her work, but for her private choices. At the same time, her career faced turbulence. In 2017, the Vogue editorial where she posed in a Japanese-inspired theme became a lightning rod for criticism, accused of cultural appropriation. Though Karlie responded with humility, apologizing and pledging to learn, the incident scarred her reputation. For someone admired not only for beauty, but also for integrity, the backlash was painful and exposed the precarious balance between art, representation, and respect. Her appearances on the runway became increasingly rare. The absence of the famous Karlie Walk left a void at major fashion weeks. Fans lamented. Fashion no longer felt the same without her hypnotic stride. Instead of late-night fittings and endless travel, Karlie poured herself into personal projects, philanthropy, and eventually her growing family. For many, her silence was the hardest to bear. At an age when many models cling to the spotlight, Karlie chose stillness. Her withdrawal resembled a free fall from the intoxicating roar of applause to a quieter, contested existence. It was as though she had crossed a line few dared approach, stepping back not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Yet, her story was not one of tragic downfall. Unlike some of the 90s supermodels whose careers were consumed by scandals, addictions, or heartbreak, Karlie's disappearance carried a different texture. It was not destruction but transformation. She had traded one kind of stage for another, one spotlight for a subtler flame. Still, questions lingered. Had she surrendered too soon? Or had she courageously chosen a life outside the suffocating machinery of the industry? In the shadows of her absence, the public caught a glimpse of the dark side of fashion, the cost of brilliance, the relentless scrutiny, and the impossibility of existing without compromise. Karlie Kloss, once the darling of the runway, became instead a woman searching for balance between identity, love, and purpose. Karlie Kloss was never a model meant to be admired only for her looks. She became proof that beauty and intellect could exist side by side, and that a woman could step away from the spotlight, yet still leave behind a blazing trail. Though she no longer dominates every runway, her legacy endures, a stride that bears her name, a professionalism that became legend, and a heart devoted to empowering others. Her greatest gift to the industry is not the countless covers or campaigns, but the inspiration she has sparked through Code with Klossy. There, she has encouraged thousands of young girls to see themselves not only as muses, but as creators, future scientists, coders, leaders. She showed them that power can wear many faces. It can walk a runway, but it can also write a line of code that changes the world. Today, when people speak of Karlie Kloss, they don't just recall a Victoria's Secret angel or Dior's muse. They remember a figure who dared to be different, who chose the harder road, and who valued authenticity above applause. Perhaps the final question is not whether Karlie disappeared, but whether fashion itself was ready for someone like her. Her story reminds us that the dazzling world of 90-second supermodels will always be shadowed by the dark side of fashion, but Karlie Kloss managed to walk that tightrope with grace, courage, and a legacy that continues to resonate long after the lights have dimmed.